thank you for joining us for our webinar on fostering classroom connection with the library. My name is Rob DiPaolo. I'm the Director of Marketing for EBSCO, and I'll be moderating our session today. I'd like to start off by introducing our presenters. So first off, we have Paige Jager, as you've probably been hearing. We've been trying to get her connected. She's here. And I did pronounce that correct, Paige. It's Jager, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, good. Paige delivers professional development at the local, state, and national levels, and she's also the instructional focus editor for the new magazine, School Library Connection. And then following Paige, we also have Stephanie Dixon. Stephanie is ABC-CLIO Solutions Product Manager. She has an extensive background in developing and delivering professional development courses and has partnered with countless districts across the country in seamlessly integrating ABC-CLIO Solutions resources into their existing curriculum. Before we begin the actual presentation, I'd like to take just a quick moment to go over a few housekeeping items. Our presentation is scheduled for a full hour. We'll set aside the last few minutes of that time for a question and answer period. Again, I apologize that we're a little delayed in starting, so I'm sure, we can run a bit later if folks need the time for extra questions and so forth. But please feel free to submit all of your questions at any time during the presentation by using the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. At the end of our presentation, we'll go through your questions and answer as many of them as time allows. Should we not have sufficient time, we will respond to you directly within a day or two via email. So we will get to all questions one way or the other, so please rest assured about that. We are recording our session today, and the recording will be made available to you in the coming days. Please be advised that we have muted all audio lines to avoid feedback or interruption during the discussion, and we thank you in advance for keeping your line muted throughout the event. Again, please use the chat box to communicate with presenters and myself regarding any questions that you may have during the session. And without further delay, I'd like to hand things over to Paige to get us started. Paige, handing the rights over to you now.
Well, thank you, Rob. The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And the ironic thing is that we were all chatting before, from 3:30 for a while, so we knew we were connected. So go figure. Let's without further ado, let's start and talk about connections with the library and the classroom. If you're like librarians that are in our area, I hear time and time again that they're very concerned, not complaining, but more concerned about losing the loss of classroom connections with the mandates of new standards and testing and things that are just absorbing classroom time, that they're saying that they're really losing the connection. So we're here, we hope to give you in the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes, a few concrete places that you should be connecting with the standards in the classroom. And, any idea is a good idea, so let's go on without further ado and talk about empowering tomorrow's leaders through inquiry and the standards. Now, if the standards have changed, our resources have changed. So we really have to that we assess our program and say, have we moved and have we changed alongside those changes? Let's talk about the students and the way the students have changed. This is no news flash to you, but if you've taught long enough, you know that the students that are sitting in your seats are not the same as they were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. The kids, the millennials, are just completely different. And one place that shows up is really in plagiarism. Plagiarism is rampant. It always was there, but it's probably easier because of the internet. In fact, it's skyrocketed. I have a hard time believing some of these statistics, which came from Assignment Proof or, plagiarism checker company that's out there. But in the upper right-hand corner, you see 47% of students even believe that teachers choose to ignore it. Where are we? I think we all could probably guess one or two of those teachers, but we can't ignore that. And inquiry-based learning really gives us the opportunity to attack and offer them a solution for plagiarism. Let's talk about another thing, another reason why the students have changed is because reading has changed. Reading is no longer black and white, top down, left, right, answer the questions at the bottom. It's not linear and it's not sequential. Well, to some extent it's sequential, but you do not know the extent where someone's going to start with predominant reading happening online now in e-format. You may know where they start, but you may not know where they start, and you're certainly not going to know where they end up. It's three-dimensional. And once again, inquiry-based learning will play a part in solving some of those reading connections. The other part of the millennial or the student change is how we have to pedagogically, through our pedagogy, we have to address them with student-centered learning. No longer is it a time where we have to cover material. Stand and deliver is dead and gone. And hopefully your teachers will begin to change with the impact of the rollout of Common Core standards and new C3 standards and resources, e-resources and technology infusion. Hopefully we're moving out of that coverage mode into uncover and discover. Kids need student-centered learning. So let's talk a little bit about the standards. The standards have changed, and we're too familiar with that. If you haven't heard, even the social studies standards have changed. And let's hear a little hooray, because this is good news for librarians. If you're wondering how to connect with classrooms, just wait till people start really seeing the impact of the new social studies reformation, let's call it. It is infused with inquiry. In fact, this little rainbow at the bottom is symbolic of what they're calling the arc of inquiry. In fact, they say, this is from the National Council of Social Studies, they say the nature of social studies should be the pursuit of knowledge through questions. We've been saying that for 10 years. So hopefully you'll start to see connections with the classroom teachers, with social studies teachers. In fact, they go so far as to say this is what the students should be doing. Look at that list. Developing questions, planning inquiry, evaluating sources, evidence, communicating, and taking informed action. That's the goal, that students will learn enough to be compelled to do something or change the world. But do those bullets look like inquiry-based learning? When I heard S.G. Grant speak, who was one of the authors of the C3 standards, he said, he opened his dialogue saying, the memorizing dates and facts has failed us. We need to get students to deep learning. And I almost clapped for the man right there, because we all understand exactly where we're at, the same place. The kids need engaged learning. They need to learn more. They need to learn by doing and not just memorization. So here we are. We're in the midst of year 3 in Common Core, and teachers are becoming acquainted with this, and that's our other connection. If your teachers are in their silo classrooms saying, I have to do the Common Core, they're not doing the Common Core. Let's talk about that. Look at some of these anchor standards: writing arguments, writing explanatory texts, write narratives with well-chosen details, conduct short as well as more sustained research projects. They used to call that they used to only have 4 standards. Well, now they're calling many things anchor standards, which begs the question, if everything's an anchor, everything's a priority, then really nothing's a priority. But basically, let's take a look at in more detail. Let's scrutinize the pedagogy of the Common Core. And I did this years ago when the Common Core was unveiled. Now look towards the bottom. You'll see that in the ELA standards, over 80 times it says research and reflect. The only thing higher than that is analyze and speak, think analytically. That's the goal. Where social studies may have a goal of civic action, we have a goal in ELA, we could say, of getting kids to think. That's what information is all about. It equips them to solve problems, make decisions, conclusions, synthesize and conclude. Dare we say that research is mentioned more than all the other pedagogy up top? Look at writing arguments is only about 50 times mentioned. But tell me, are your teachers researching more than they're doing other things? I dare say that I've heard they're not. But you can be the town crier here. You can say, listen, I heard research to build and present knowledge is an anchor standard. Can I help you with that? Or have a few ideas. Now let's give you a few examples where these connections in the Common Core could come about. Once again, look at the list. You see discussion, debate. You say, of course, avoiding plagiarism, but integrating information, solving a problem. Well, let's take a look. In discussion and debate, it could be something like, discuss and debate the balance of power at a constitutional convention in Philadelphia. Is that student-centered? And guess what they need for that? They need information. They need to research to be able to speak intelligently. How about the second bullet? Write a speech that your state representative could have delivered at the Continental Congress. What do they have to do to be prepared for that? Research. These are examples that need evidence. Where are they going to get this evidence, research, data, or information? From the library, hopefully, or your library resources. Build a timeline out of American immigration. There you go. Another social studies one. How about write a speech to argue at the congressmen during the 1840s? They had a big debate over whether Texas should be annexed. They'll need, that's deep research. And once they deeply research, they can speak intelligently and they can write. Create a documentary called Imperialism Through Pages. So the teaching should go from a coverage model to an assignment with these pedagogy verbs that requires students to dig deeply and research to be able to create the knowledge product with information and evidence. And when your teachers understand the pedagogy change, they should be connecting with you in the library. Build an evidence-based claim. Has America lived up to the quote on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty? Does anybody remember what that quote says? You can put that in the chat box for people. Dare we say they could build a evidence-based claim as to either side. If a student can support their claim with evidence and consider multiple perspectives, making informed decisions, there may not be one answer to that question, there may be two sides to the coin. All right, so in our Common Core and in the new, or if you're in a non-Common Core state, if you're in new standard state, you have probably heard these terms: guiding questions, essential questions, text-dependent questions, inquiry questions, and evidence-based claims. I'd like to point out here that some of these are going on in the library, some are going on in the classroom, some are going on within a text document. It's very important for me to set the record straight here as we talk about making classroom connections. There's a lot of things going on in the classroom where they're remaining in the text. And for instance, let's talk about this close reading and text-dependent questions. This is one place that classrooms should be connecting with the library, but they're not. A teacher often gives one document to their students to read, or maybe two. Maybe they'll choose the two perspectives, and they'll give them two close reading opportunities. And they'll ask them text-dependent questions. And guess what? That straitjackets the student's thought. Everything has to be answered with evidence from the text, and they never get out of that text or the other text. And it's a very stymied way of learning. We need to encourage our teachers to only give them one close reading, to give them one side of the coin, to give them one perspective. And then ask them, what else do you want to know about that? What else do you want to, what's missing here? Is this biased? What other questions do you have? And then go to the library, put research as the counter to the one perspective. And mark my words, a lot of them are only reading one perspective. They're probably only reading one document in there. So I would challenge you to encourage your teachers to suggest, hey, only give them one thing. And I call this being inside the text and outside the text. Only when they go outside of the text will they get to inquiry-based learning. If they're remaining in the text with text-dependent questions and evidence that's garnered from the text, then guess what? They're not going to get to inquiry. And they're only going to get to inquiry-based learning when they leave the text, so they go outside. Now, what is this model of inquiry? We have this WISE model: wonder, investigate, synthesize, and express. And if teachers have never done inquiry before, this is a very simple and user-friendly model because it's 4 steps. You know, it's based upon the Stripling model, and there's the guided inquiry model. There are other models out there that are good. But if your teachers have never tried inquiry before, you can experiment with Wonder, Investigate, Synthesize, Express. It's easy to wrap their head around, and it's a good beginning. But essential to the whole process of inquiry is really the ability to master and craft the art of crafting an essential question. It's difficult, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. For instance, just like understanding by design and Wiggins and McTighe did years ago, he said you start your educational journey with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. Where are we going? What is it that we really need the students to learn at the end of this? Are there arguable points? And we really make sure your essential question sort of is real life. Now, the 6 bullets we gave as examples for using evidence, if you look at them, they were arguable points. And they were true to real life. Some of them were true to real historical life, but they were true to real life. I could ask you, how big is your carbon footprint? And I really want the kids to get at, you know, their get to their science, but it's real. It has a pronoun in there, and it starts with how, why, what if, you know, should. So anyway, how big is your carbon footprint is an example. How you can embrace your content area. And in answering that question, the students are compelled to uncover and discover the answer and trip over the vocabulary of the discipline or use it knowingly to demonstrate their learning. Now let's show you a few examples of how these questions work. And we'll use ABC Solutions in the background. The pictures that are coming are all from there. And you can see Math Destiny. We all know there. We could say, hey, is our modern day Sunbelt brain drain similar to westward expansion? This would be a little higher level because in the students will have gotten Manifest Destiny, you know, earlier. Here's another one. How was Manifest Destiny different than the Indian Removal Act? In order to answer that, a student has to uncover and discover knowledge and build an evidence-based claim or take a position, find information, find evidence, and really digest it, synthesize it to draw conclusions. Here we go. If you were living in the 1800s, would you have gone west? When I had talked to a social studies teacher, I said to them, what is it, you know, UBD-wise, crafting the essential questions, this is about a middle school, let's say. And the teacher said, I want my students to understand that there was great promise and economic opportunity, but possibly also great peril. So he knew what his students wanted to learn. He knew what he would have covered previously. So we ask an essential question that gets them the opportunity to dig into our online resources because we're no longer always in a textbook. And that's the whole great solution. The students have changed and our resources have changed. Uncover and discover using the knowledge of the vocabulary of the discipline to answer that question. And who owns that? The kids own it rather than the teacher. Let's talk a little bit about immigration. Pick your era and your country because I want my students to understand that immigration is heard around the world throughout the country. It wasn't just 1600 on. With the new C3 standards, they're lumping more content thematically. So that's why you might say, hey, pick your era and your country. And then they say, look at this. Look at these. Look at this problem through the social studies lenses. Economics. Look at this geographically. Look at this politically. Let's look in the ABC-CLIO solutions and let's look for cultural indications. You know, and so you might ask them a question. If you were living in the 1600s, would you have come to America? Choose your voice, your country. Or prepare for a family decision. Prepare for, you know, discussion and debate. Should we go? Or if you want to look bigger and do more thematically, why do people migrate? That's an example of that C3 thematic aggregation. Then you could look at immigration, migration, westward expansion. You put it under a bigger umbrella. So the essential question, sometimes it's called a research question. Sometimes it's just an EQ for a short-term little assignment. Sometimes it's a bigger question, an overall question that will embrace a longer research investigation or a longer time period. Either way, it's student-centered. Here we go. Here's another example of an essential question. How does our current EL issue compare with 100 years ago? There you go. That's an investigation waiting to happen. 1860, 150 years ago. Look at those stats. They're probably very similar to modern day. And we, why do we have a problem now? We had a problem back then. How is America still a melting pot? There's not one. Give the kids a chance to uncover and just type of questions. How has immigration shaped our American culture? Now, these questions, essential questions, the art and craft of writing these essential questions really requires that we embed something for them to synthesize. So here we go. How would your life be different if you were living in the 1600s? So I have to compare, I have to contrast, I have to synthesize what I find in order to speak with evidence and really be able to answer that with evidence. How would your life be different if you were during the Harlem Renaissance? Or pre-Civil War? Write in first-person journal.
So I'm going to build on what Paige shared, and thank you so much, Paige. That was great. And what I'm going to share is the perspective of the ABC-CLIO Solutions digital curriculum collections and how they can support exactly what Paige was speaking to, that classroom connection and, using questions as a springboard for instruction and the whole inquiry process throughout. So a little context about the solutions, and then I'm going to jump in and show you some specific resources that you can use in that type of instruction. So the solutions are a 3-in-1 resource, and many of you may know of ABC-CLIO as ABC-CLIO databases, and that's where these started. Paige commented that as students have changed, so have resources, and the solutions are a perfect example of that in that they have evolved and grown so much over the years, but maintaining their status as a database and growing and becoming even more. And that's what you see here on the screen. So today, ABC-CLIO's databases are known as the solutions because they contain within them a full standards-aligned textbook, completely aligned to Common Core, as well as state standards, critical perspectives on key questions, those essential questions, so we get multiple perspectives on those questions all in one place, as well as an overflowing resource library with thousands of primary source documents as well as secondary resources to really support the students' learning and inquiry process. There are 15 titles in the solutions collection. You can see them up here. And to be clear, each one of those titles on the screen contains these 3 components you see in the middle, the textbook, the library, and the perspectives. So let's go ahead and take a look. I want to show you, and Paige so wonderfully shared some screens from the solutions. I am going to go ahead and go into World History, the Modern Era. And when I log into the modern era, remember I said there's 3-in-1. There's that textbook component, which can be found here at the top where I'm circling behind the topics tab. And so what we're looking at here is that e-textbook table of contents. And remember, Paige commented on content being now organized in a way that can be both chronological but also thematic. And you can see that carries through into the solutions resources in those black themes. The Perspectives tab, the next tab over at the top, is where students are exposed to those key questions. So as they launch into those inquiry-based projects, you can start them here in the Perspectives. How did the threat of a common enemy influence colonial political organization? Look to the left, students are provided with need-to-know information to build that foundation of knowledge to ultimately form that informed conclusion, as well as they're also exposed to and presented with multiple perspectives. So here's one example of a perspective. In other words, an expert's written response to that question. I'm a former English teacher, so the English teacher in me just goes, oh my gosh, this is perfect for collaborating with my social studies counterpart. I could have my students be examining the structure of this argumentative piece here that you can see is written down here by this assistant professor. And then the content can be reinforced in the social studies classroom. And then, of course, where can they go for more research? Over to the library. So there's all those bridges that can be built through using these resources. And then, of course, within the solutions themselves, up here on the library tab, that's the third component. It takes you into a very great advanced search where students can find, for example, documents. If we're just looking for documents, maybe not even on a certain topic, we're just wanting to spring our research from a document, we can do that, and I can use that advanced search to get down to exactly what I'm looking for. So students could start by looking at a certain document and launch themselves into those questions about, well, what does this say? What more do I want to know? So that's the 3-in-1, and that 3-in-1 is available within, as I said, all of these titles. So if I were to jump to American history, again, you've got the textbook, the perspectives, and the library. Now, there are some advanced tools, and I want to show you one that's called a research list, and these are developed specifically to support that, that learning process that a student goes through, and specifically to build bridges between the library and the classroom, and that you can assign to students specific lists of resources. And so here's one that's called Images of the Great Depression. And what the students could do here, notice over here in the notes, it says this could be used, this list of images can be used, and look to the left where I'm circling, as a springboard for discussion and inquiry. So if I put my student hat on right now, I've just come into class, my teachers assigned me this list, I might look at this picture of the Dust Bowl, and any number of questions might be popping up. You know, what am I looking at? What's the Dust Bowl? Why is that house in the condition it's in? And perhaps I want to learn more. So there, just from that first picture in this collection of images, I have many questions. I can go back to my list. I can look at another question or another image that might spark more questions and prompt me to learn more, in which case I might come over to my topics section. And this, remember, this is our textbook component, and maybe I want to learn some more about this farmers in the Dust Bowl, the Depression type of timeline or time frame. So I can come in here, I can read the content here on the page. Notice there's hyperlinks within, but I want to point out in the left, there's also these wonderful video modules within all of the content in ABC-CLIO solutions. So for those students who might have a hard time engaging with those complex texts, there's a video format for all of the content in here. Also great for flipping the learning experience, blending the learning experience. So there's always going to be this expert introducing the topic, and then ultimately it's going to shift to having images and maps and flags with this expert's voice over those. So those are great tools to, progress the students in their exploration of a topic. And then maybe they want to go even further, and maybe they're thinking, gosh, we're also studying this in my literature class, in my English class. So I want to show you they can even jump into perspectives, and I can come back here, and we have a whole series called Literature Connections, or the Solutions, I should say, has a whole collection called Literature Connections, where we tie these key questions into core literature. In this case, you can see it's the Grapes of Wrath. And again, there's that key question. There's not a yes or no answer. It's not black and white, and we're going to present to the students multiple perspectives. We're going to present to them the need to know and all those different resources they need to form their own conclusion. And again, you can insert these resources into that process of discovery that comes as part of that inquiry process. So again, that's some of the tools. I've got a couple other goodies I want to show you, one of which is in the World Geography solution. And this tool is called CLIO View. It's not limited to world geography. I'm just going to demo it for you here. But consider the questions that could be generated through this tool. And I'm just grabbing some countries over here from the left and adding them over to the right. And what CLIO View is a statistical tool. So I can come in here and notice I can say, well, I want to know the average life expectancy. And I'm curious about how that might relate to the amount of doctors in these countries or in that region. And maybe I'm also curious about the population growth. Maybe there's some kind of a connection or not. There, let's see. So I submit, and students can that quickly, if your eyes go to all these numbers in the middle of the screen, you're going to see that I have got the stats for these these categories of information, and think about the questions that can come here. Wow, look at the average life in Angola, 54.6 or 55. Well, goodness, look at the amount of doctors per 1,000 people in that area, pretty low. So there's some correlations, could lead to a lot more questions, could certainly lead to a lot more research. Another neat thing about CLIO-View, just to show you really quickly, is that you can also very easily, and students can very easily, graph that information. So also think about the fact that you could present them with this graph or two graphs, and they could use that as the springboard for their inquiry and their questions. So CLIO-View is a great tool. Coming into Staff Edition, I mentioned that all the content in the solutions is aligned to and really truly developed from the Common Core and C3 standards as well as state standards, and there is a tool specifically in here to allow librarians and teachers alike to pull that content as it aligns to the standards. So it's very easy. I just use some pull-down menus to find the resources in world geography that align with my standards selection. And last but not least, very quickly, I have to show you one of my favorite tools. It's the Support Center. And this is where it all comes to life instructionally, in that you can come into, the instructors, the teacher, the librarian can come into the Support Center, and you could find here in classroom activities, and really it should be, it's learning activities, because these are things that can take place anywhere. Maybe I'm looking for a learning activity that revolves around inquiry. And you can see here what I'm presented with as the educator are research lists. So pre-created research lists, you know, collections of resources I can use. I'm also presented with lesson plans. So I can find lesson plans here that that lead students towards asking those essential questions, that lead students on that path of inquiry and discovery. And I don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's all here for me to use, and it's right here in the Support Center. Last but not least, in the Support Center, there are also, Paige spoke to the issue of plagiarism, right? So, I mean, here we've got these are called tutors. So we've got tutors on making an argument. So these are short videos that teach students how to make a compelling argument. And as they're doing that, maybe they're reading primary sources. So here's videos on reading primary sources, finding them. But also, like I said, Paige mentioned plagiarism being an issue, and we certainly recognize that at ABC-CLIO. So we even have a 3- or 6-part tutor, that speaks to how to avoid that issue and how to not commit plagiarism in that research process. So again, those are called the tutors, research tutors, and they're here within the Support Center of ABC-CLIO Solutions. So I'm going to back out. Those are some of my personal favorite tools. They're literally overflowing. The solutions are literally overflowing with tools and resources to support those classroom to library connections, to support the inquiry process. Those are some of my favorites. You may have noticed throughout there is the listen tool, so there is text-to-speech throughout to make all of this content accessible to all learners. And I also want to just point out that everything within the solutions is also translatable. So, you know, as you're thinking about working with these kinds of resources with other students who speak other languages, it can be translated into Spanish, Chinese, and French, as well as be read out loud in those languages. So that's very, very quick. Those are the ABC-CLIO solutions. I encourage you to sign up for a free 30-day trial. You can contact your EBSCO rep to do that. And also at the end of today's session, a form will be sent to you, and you can request more information that way. But it's completely no strings attached. It's a trial you can use with all of your students, with all of your teachers. Just share it amongst your institution and have fun. Have fun with it. And if any questions arise, we're here to support you. So
Thanks,
at this point, any questions? I'm here. No, yeah, absolutely. I should say any questions, we're here to answer right now. We've got about 9 more minutes, so questions, I'm ready. And Paige is ready too.
We definitely have a few that have come along here. I hope Paige is still connected, but she keeps coming in and out here, so I might focus on ones directed at you for the time being. Apologies for that. A couple quick ones. I mean, there have been a few comments and questions that have come out. I'm going to try to paraphrase a few together here. A lot of them deal with things that I think you were just touching upon, with ways to help generate more questions that librarians and staff can ask faculty to help increase that level of engagement. Didn't know if you had any additional tips or ideas along those lines you might want to share. And then another one that relates to that is, do you have any, on the ABC-CLIO side, do you have any tools or resources to help promote these the solutions to faculty to help with increased usage and engagement in the school?
Okay, so for this, I'm going to have to circle back to that first question.
Sorry.
I'm not sure I fully, that's okay. But the second question I've got, so as far as, yeah, if promoting within your school, within the solutions, I would say if you go into the support center, and that's, again, I went to the staff edition, and then go into the support center over here to the left, you can come into resources for success, and if you want to inspire and promote through the stories of other people's success, I would suggest coming over here to teacher resources and these spotlights on success. These are great ways to share best practices that are happening around the country. So that's one thing you can use to promote and encourage and you know, inspire people. Also, if it's just a matter of usage, this Getting Started section is fantastic in that there's little quick start videos. So if you want to introduce CLIO View, for example, if you thought, wow, that was a really cool graphing tool, here's a short little video you can show to promote awareness of that specific tool. As far as overall promotional materials, you can always visit the solution, abc-clio.com, you know, corporate site, and there's the solutions link, and you can download flyers and whatnot. And certainly, again, reach out to your EBSCO rep or to us, and we can provide you with different, you know, one-pagers and things of that nature. So that's the second question. And that first question, was that Paige?
Let me rephrase it. It might be going for Paige. Paige, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
yes,
good.
I can. If you can hear me, I just thought I'd throw out there also to model at a faculty meeting. If you want an idea, you know, PR, show them what you have. Somehow, if you can model something at a faculty meeting, whether it's ABC-CLIO and showing them the multiple perspectives, the essential questions that are so hard for teachers to create, and that's just an idea for you. You know, just take your 5 minutes if you get it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Here's an interesting one that just came in, actually. This could be either one of you that wants to jump on this. The question, I'll read it verbatim here. It said, we're in the process of adopting inquiry-based learning while also creating a bring-your-own-device environment. Excuse me. How do I convince teachers that the library is a place they want to be when their students can just use their phones in their classrooms?
Well, yeah, that's the age-old. Hopefully you'll get so busy that they'll have to be in the library and using their phone. The objective is really, as we enter the information age instruction, that the information is ubiquitous, but somehow in the process, remember writing standards 6, 7, 8, and 9 deal with you know, credibility, accurately, you know, reliable, avoiding plagiarism, and so that's your domain, not necessarily ELA or social studies teachers aren't familiar with that. So, you know, offer to do writing standards 6, 7, and 8, and or create the screencasting that'll put you in the classroom. You know, create screencasts using your products, ABC-CLIO, as well as your own, you know, databases and your book catalog, so that you are in the classroom with them.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And what I would add to that is, you know, you can count on the teachers being, as well as yourselves, you know, content experts. But I think you are experts and have been for so long in inquiry and in finding information and in how to really truly navigate these tools and use these tools in instruction. So I think, you know, partnering up and each of you bringing your strengths to the process in that way would be a win.
You know, and for inquiry-based learning, it's more than the phone. The phone will throw them out on Google, but you want them to have your databases. Not only that, you want them to have your books. You need to convince the teachers to say, hey, give them one perspective, or let them access their phone or their devices in the classroom, one-on-one devices, one thing. But bring them into the library so that they actually feel like it's a bigger search, that they're not just enabling, you know, cutting and pasting from a digital source, but collaboratively to have collaborative work environments. So I would say, you know, hey, can I help you with this? Be a marketing, and don't ask them for help. Say, how can I help you with this? Not, do you want my help, but how can I help you meet the inquiry-based learning? Or let me suggest, anyway, you're your best marketing agent.
So more open-ended questions, basically, to help with that engagement. If I can say quickly, I struggle with this with my own children, where you give them access to tons of content, but they need to know how to use that content, and that's where I think information professionals such as our attendees today can really help with that. And it is a matter of sort of selling yourself, you know, in that regard. So those are some great points, guys, and thank you for that. I know we're getting close to the end here. I got one or two other quick questions if I can. Here's a quick one for Stephanie, actually. Does ABC-CLIO have any resources appropriate for students in kindergarten and first grade?
So the resources that would be appropriate within the solutions would be all of the videos and the images. You can very easily find those by using the advanced search and just searching for media. Quite honestly, the written content is definitely not going to be appropriate for them, but the different images and you know, media pieces are great. Absolutely.
Just before closing, I did not get to close my closing slide with the answer to the plagiarism is that inquiry-based learning reduces the, you know, the incidences of plagiarism. If you really are working in an inquiry environment, and I applaud the person who said that their school is moving to that. It takes a while for everybody to understand it, but plagiarism is reduced through inquiry.
Right, that's good. Paige, you're sounding much clearer right now. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, maybe from the end of your presentation in the last couple of minutes here?
I had a slide. I did have a slide for credits for, but Stephanie did a great job also just picking up where I left off and weaving in some of the content. I apologize. You know, we have high-class equipment here that was supposed to work, and it didn't work. And, you know, what are you going to do? You monitor and adjust as you do in education all the time, and we hope that despite the absence of a few slides, you got ideas for, especially if you're in a one-on-one device environment. If you take ABC-CLIO products and your other databases too, as well as inquiry-based learning, and you weave that together, you have a winning combination for the millennial students and meeting the new standards. You really do.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And we are right at the top of the hour again here, so I'd probably, in the interest of respecting folks' time, we should probably start to wrap up. A few folks have asked about getting the full copy of your presentation, your PowerPoint page, so as long as you're okay with that, we can send that out in conjunction with the recording of the video.
That's fine.
Is that good? Okay, great. So we'll take care of that. So anyway, I'd like to thank everyone for attending our session today, and I'd like to thank both of our presenters. And again, thank you everybody for your patience with our small technical difficulties that we had. As mentioned and hinted at, we will be sending out an email, excuse me, in the next few days with a link to the recording of today's session, as well as Paige's full PowerPoint presentation, should you like to revisit that as well as the additional contact information. As Stephanie mentioned, should you have any specific questions about ABC-CLIO products and or would like to request a free trial. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Paige. And have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.